My name is Alexey. I am from Ukraine, from Kyiv. I lived all my life there. I'm a painter. I paint murals, I paint canvases, I do drawings. I do a lot of this kind of visual expression things. I was interested in drawing and painting since I was a child. So my career of artist, especially artists who do works in the streets, started maybe 20 years ago. But I'm not only limited on painting with painting only on the streets. I think it's only on one of the sides of what I do. And especially last few years, I prefer to work more on canvases and drawings, kind of studio work, more than painting on the streets, on the walls. Even because I started from this, kind of like this. I started to paint on the streets from graffiti, but it was more than 20 years ago. And my interest to it continued not so long. It was maybe like 4 or 3 years. But then I realized that it's kind of really limited. You can't express everything what you want to say with graffiti, because it's kind of subculture related to New York culture of graffiti more. But for me, it was more interesting to find my own way of expression. I was became more interested in fine art, because it gives you more opportunity to express. Actually, I can't collect all these things in one for myself, but yes, I was kind of inspired by all these topics to do my works. For me, actually, creative process is kind of mystery, and I don't know how all this get together in my work, but in everyday things that you described, like surrealism or pastimes or religion or science, I find some interesting parts in it and use it in my work. But how they get together, I don't know. As I told, that creative process is really not explainable process, and most of images for my work comes from subconscious, and I really like some absurd stories. And when you trying to do, for example, some particular story with particular idea, it's getting bored, because it's getting in the way of realism or something like this. But if you trying to side away from this, for me it became more interesting, related to creative process. Usually I try to invent my own symbols, kind of to create my own symbology. I don't use kind of traditional symbols for my work. I want to add that if I do mural, for example, I really try to fit my work in the location, in the city or country. For sure, for me it's important my work will be fitted well to location and to the city or country. That's why I'm trying to invent some symbols that are related to location. Also with colors, composition of my painting, with everything. Maybe not everyone can understand this symbology, but I don't really care. It comes from subconscious, but also dreams, actually, it's something that comes from subconscious. And I don't really use often my dream visuals, but sometimes, yes, sometimes I have ideas that came from dreams. For sure, I transform them in some visual style of what I do, but yeah, some images comes from dreams. For me, it's kind of funny, because if I paint in the streets and somebody come and say, "Oh, it's something kind of Ďaļi," I'm kind of bored of this question, because if people don't really know about art or something, they see something unusual or surrealistic and they always say, oh, this is Dali. It's kind of label, I think. But the movement of surrealism actually from 20th century was super huge, and was so many artists and so many directions of this, and to have association of what I do only with Dali is kind of boring. And also what I do, I think it's kind of neo-surrealism, because movement of surrealism was in 20th century, and then it was kind of became not really popular. But now I'm trying to do something. Actually, I do what I like, and I don't really care how, what kind of label on it, what kind of it will be called. And Mobius, actually, I like it very much because of his line, way of drawing is really amazing. But now I have a lot of artists that I appreciate in my mind. So not only Mobius or Dali. No, for example, now I like very much works of 𝗬𝗏. It's a really famous kind of surrealist, but also symbolist, I don't know. What else? Actually, I don't really well remember names, but I can write a big list of what I appreciate now. I started to paint on the streets 20 years ago, almost at the same time I started to work on studio works. But in that time my works on the streets was kind of more, I was dedicated more time to this. But last years I dedicate more time to studio works, opposite. So every time it's kind of, there is a relationship between studio and work on the public spaces, but it's two completely different directions of work, because painting on the street is kind of very fast, and you don't have enough time to get deeper in this work, because you already have kind of idea and sketch and your goal to do it really fast and quality on the wall or on the street. But when you work in the studio, it's kind of really different. You develop ideas, you think more on what it means. So it's kind of more deep process. If to compare it to the iceberg, there is a top part of the iceberg, it's painting on the streets, but the whole iceberg is kind of your work in the studio. Of course, when Russia attacked Ukraine, me and my wife were in Tenerife, actually just for vacation. So at that time we couldn't come back home, and then our decision was to stay in Europe, in Tenerife, because for me it was important to continue work, what I do, and with my work to promote Ukraine, to promote what's going on. Because, for example, my friends who stay in Ukraine now, they don't really have enough time for work, artists, for example. Some do volunteering, some went to the war to defend Ukraine. And while I am in Europe, I travel to the projects, and every time I want to promote my country with my art. Actually, I bring with me my flag. It's kind of symbol of what's going on. So I'm proud of Ukrainians who didn't defend Ukraine now. Yeah, it's kind of my input in what's going on. Also, I always trying to say with this that people have to support Ukraine. It's really important for Europe, for European civilization, for freedom. Yeah, for sure, because through my art I want to bring attention, and actually I try to not use image of war in my work, but only idea that I am a Ukrainian artist. It's already powerful that I bring my art to Europe, to the world. And really awful thing that Russia attacked Ukraine, and their goal is to destroy Ukrainian culture. That's why they bomb a lot of museums, theaters, cultural centers. schools and destroy this, and because their goal to erase Ukrainian culture. And for me, it's really important to continue do what I do, because I represent Ukrainian culture and Ukrainian art in the world. For me, interesting all this God and science, religion and science. But as for me, I became last year more kind of agnostic, and I don't really like religious fanaticism, and I don't like to when people get into the science like religion as well. So for me, it's just directions of for the human mind, religion or science.
Thank you.
Thank you.